Hi, welcome back to the Launch Point Leader Podcast. My name's Lori.
I'm Beau.
And we're so excited to be back with another week to share with you a story a listener has written into us. If you want to write us in, you can always visit our website, launchpointleader.com/podcast. We'd be happy to read that and have your chance to have it on the podcast.
We'd be delighted, Lori.
We would love it.
Delighted.
So, our letter this week says, Dear Launch Point Leader, I find myself in a leadership role without the actual title. My team looks to me for guidance. I take the lead on projects, and I'm often the one keeping things on track. But I don't have an official leadership position. On paper, I'm at the same level as my entire team. I want to step up and have a bigger impact, but without the title, I sometimes feel like my influence is limited. I don't want to overstep, but I also don't want to sit back and wait for someone to officially recognize my leadership before I act. How can I lead effectively from where I am, and how do I position myself for future opportunities without seeming like I'm just chasing a promotion? Looking forward to your insight. Sincerely, Leading in Limbo.
Sounds like the boss needs to wake up a little bit here,
Yeah,
right?
definitely.
And realize what's going on. I think one of the things that stood out to me, though, is on paper, I'm at the same level as my entire team. How do I have a bigger impact without the title?
Yeah.
And I feel like my influence is limited. So I would kind of push back on you a little bit on that, listener, and say, your team is going to you already.
Yeah.
Your influence is immense.
Yeah, absolutely.
It might be the same on paper, but do not think that your influence isn't greater than what the rest of your team is that's on the same level as you if they're all coming to you for guidance, right? So I think recognize that first. Second, I don't think it's overstepping at all if you do a full look at your scope of work, your performance based on the metrics that you're supposed to hit, based on the duties that you're supposed to hold. If all those things are at the correct level or better than, and you have great influence over your team, then it's okay to go to your superior and say, hey, I just want to kind of play this scenario for you and say, I'm happy to do it, but I'd love the opportunity to talk about what a leadership role or what a next step might look like, just to make it a little bit more official. And frankly, to be compensated appropriately for the additional level of responsibility that I'm taking on amongst my team.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, because typically even on an athletic team, whether it's football, baseball, basketball, whatever the sport might be, and I know you're deeply rooted in sports, Lori.
Yes.
Sports ball, whatever the sports ball might be. There's a captain or a group of captains on every team, and they might be on that team. They might be playing the similar position as somebody else, but I can promise you, those captains are compensated and thought of differently, and they are placed in that role and called the captain for a reason. Even though they might be doing some of the same functions as their other teammates, their actions stand out. So they get the title, they get the pay. I kind of feel like this is one of those scenarios where if this is really the case, I don't think you're risking anything at all about overstepping.
No.
I think you need to go and say, this is the case. Let's get that next step in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I read this, my thought was, in an ideal world, obviously the business would have already recognized the work that Leading Limbo is doing and approached them for probably a role. But I worry that they talk about how not to seem like they're just chasing a promotion or how do I not overstep. I think you're understepping and holding yourself back a little bit by not doing exactly what you said. And my thought kind of went to compare the job description you were hired with to what if there's already an established somebody in the role that you're kind of fulfilling that job description, or say there's not. Maybe it's a newer company, smaller team, and as you grow, you're taking on projects associated with that.
Yeah.
Create kind of like, here's what I am doing in the week to week, and here's how this will add continued value and will stay needed. Because it's not appropriate to do this in the situation, and it becomes what we talk about so much. You are becoming a person rather than a system. A lot sounds like some things are happening because you yourself are doing it, which in the short term is okay, but typically what happens in these kind of situations, you've got a highly motivated person with potential to be a leader. If there isn't compensation in a role and things like that, it's not someone that didn't want to overstep. You're probably going to find somewhere that will honor what you're doing in that business, and then the business you're currently in is going to be left with a gap.
Yeah.
Right?
Great point. Or system instead of persons. But the thing that you said that I think struck me, which I thought was probably just the greatest gift that you could give this listener, is the idea of not just going to the supervisor or the next level up in leadership and saying, hey, this is what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Can we get a raise and a title? But it's what you said. It's taking a job description and going, hey, this is what I was hired to do. And not to say this is bad, but this is what I was hired to do. Here's what I'm actually doing. Here is the proposed role that I would love to have. And I'm already fulfilling. And I can add some things to it. Here's how I think it'll impact the business in a positive way, our team in a positive way, our mission, our results in a positive way. And if you take that and it's legitimate and it's not fluff, and it's self-aware, and you take that to a leader that actually has self-awareness about the business itself, I think they look at that and go, great.
Yeah.
Like there's some details to work out here probably, but I think this all makes...
they should be open to
this all makes perfect sense. I mean, you're a living, breathing example of this. I mean, you came to me years ago with a job description of a need in the business, some things you're already doing, how to make things better. And it was like, man, this is feels like a little bit of a risk, but you're right in us needing it. You're right in what you're doing, and you're right in you being the right person for it. So what's the worst that can happen? We try it and it doesn't work. I mean, that's probably bad, right? But it's led to so much stuff. And honestly, that's how so many of the positions in one of our companies have been created, is if people have come to me and have gone, hey, this is what I am seeing, boots on the ground. This is what I think needs to happen. Here's a proposal. Here's how I can fulfill it. What do you think? Yeah. And it's like, God, I love that. I love that. They're not waiting on you to sit back and tell them what to do. Yeah,
that's true. And that is kind of where how I even thought of that, because I was able to do that with you. And I had the benefit of knowing that you were the type of boss and had established the kind of leadership that was open to that innovation and ideas. And it was still really scary, right? I don't think this is an easy thing necessarily to do. Yeah. Well, I didn't know you were scared at the time, but it's probably best I didn't. But you being able to take that risk and seeing the benefits and seeing like, wow, I wouldn't dream of not doing that now or doing that for the time that I did, is really, really cool. But I think also leading in Limbo, there's also, it's easy to assume that maybe your leaders you do currently have realize what you're doing. And it could be as simple as they don't realize that you're kind of buffering some of that would typically go to them or go through that. And so there could be that opportunity there. So don't assume the worst of the situation. Not saying you are, but it can be easy to be like, oh, well, they know and they don't care. And, that kind of mentality we can get sometimes really get into our head. So go in with the best intentions, go in with your data, go in with what you're doing, go in with the feedback and encouragement of your team. I think your team already supports you. You talk about you're not sure how far your influence reaches. I think exactly what Beau said earlier. It's clear if they're coming to you and you're already kind of leading some of these projects with them, your influence is there. You have their buy-in, which is the most invaluable thing a leader can have, is the buy-in and support of their team as they influence them to help them grow.
The hard work's already done, honestly.
Yeah, it is. So I think it's that's going to help you do that. And I wouldn't wait for a future quote-unquote opportunity to come up that may or may not happen. It's time to take action on the momentum you've been building, whether you've been realizing it or not.
Perfect. I think perfect points.
Yeah.
I think from a standpoint, you got to realize that the leader that you want to have recognize this, they have a different job than what you have, and they're dealing with different day-to-days than what you're dealing with. So your point of just because they don't see it doesn't mean that they don't care. Yeah. It's that they might actually really not know. Right. So you taking all those steps that you suggested would be a huge, huge opportunity. So so go do that.
Yeah, exactly.
And then write us back and let us know what your new role is and how it's going, honestly, because it sounds like we're ready to roll.
Big things on the horizon. Absolutely. I feel confident about that. Well, leading in Limbo, thank you so much. I'm really excited just for your future steps. I think you've got some great actions here that hopefully you'll be able to see some real results on very soon. And take some of that ownership. So thank you for writing in and sharing with us where you're at. If you want to write us back in, or if anybody else out there has something similar or a completely new scenario thing they're dealing with, they want to write us in, you can always visit our website, launchpointleader.com/podcast, and write us in from there. Thanks so much. Have a great week.
See you next time.